Happy New Year. Woo.
Happy 2019. How y'all doing? How you feeling?
2019, we're almost back in the 20s. I think that's kind of cool, actually.
The roaring
to think
20s?
About. Yeah.
It is.
How it all just goes back around. We'll see what happens.
We gonna bring back the flapper dresses or no?
Maybe. But to stick to 19, because we're already going mad ahead, going into the 20s. With it being the start of New Year's, we didn't want it to be like some super cliche, like how to make your goals, etc. But with everybody talking about resolutions and things they want to do this year, you know, we wanted to think of an applicable topic. And so, Carlie, what did we come up with today?
We came up with, how do I actually change? Like, how do I actually make a change?
And part of that came from the fact that, you know, we can say, oh, I want to procrastinate less, or I want to wake up earlier, I want to do this or that. But how often do we still get stuck in the same ruts? Like we don't really change, we don't do, or maybe we do for a little bit, but we don't stick to it. And so today we want to talk about why that is and what some things are that we can do to actually be a different person, like mindset wise, which then I guess goes into your actions being different.
Mm-hmm. So how, like, we have these resolutions, we have these goals, we have these things we want to accomplish, this better, you know, version of ourselves we're trying to grow into every single day. But what does that actually look like? Mm-hmm. How do I make the change?
So what is change? I guess starting off with that.
Well, the technical definition of change is to make or become different. Mm-hmm. But to you, what does change mean?
That to be different. Change is just noticing that, well, personal change to me is noticing that I'm doing something that I don't want to be doing anymore, or that I want to do differently, or, you know, recognizing something I'm not doing that I wish I was doing more of. But again, even saying that, it's like, all right, I wish I was doing this. So like, you know, like just why aren't you doing it? So I guess with the types of changes we're talking about, you know, nobody really wants to do them. Like you want to just be able to chill all day and not think about work or not think about getting up or getting things done. And in a different type of world, you know, I guess that could make sense. But I mean, we have to make money. We have to, you know, get things done, and we just have things to accomplish. So, you know, you have to still have a level of responsibility that requires certain characteristics, qualities, way of life, etc. So the types of things we're talking about changing, like what's some things for you that would make sense?
Are we talking about just changing mindsets or growing?
No, well, that's what I'm saying. When you say changes, like what are the types of changes that you mean? Things that you'd want to do different based on that definition.
Yeah, to make it become different. I mean, I just want to always be constantly evolving into the highest version of myself. And what that looks like for me is becoming a better communicator, being more confident and trusting my first mind, following through on my actions. And like, those are the things I think of, like, off the top of my head. What are some for you?
So some are like mental and some are like physical things that you want to do different.
Well, I mean, I think, but they're all rooted in mental, right? Like, because you can't make a physical change unless your mindset is right. In my head.
Well, what if your mindset, you already know you want to do those things now, so still, you know what I mean?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Everything starts in the mind. So they're not necessarily physical. Like, it all has to start there first.
But if it's in your mind, then the next step is just to do it, the physical.
Yeah.
Okay. So for me, types of changes that I would think about is the same. You're thinking about habits that you want to be different, habits that I want to let go of. I guess when it's thinking about like being a better version of yourself, a lot of it has to do with just how you think about things, how you process things, how you talk to yourself, etc.
Ooh, self-talk.
But all of that still reflects out to wanting to be more productive and getting things done, and you know, being more successful with work and things like that too. So that looks like a lot of action type things that need to be done as well. So a lot of times I feel like our resolutions cover both of those bases, and that's kind of the types of changes we're talking about. So like if you say, oh, I'm not a morning person, or I don't like people, I'm not a people person, but you see value in those things and you want to do that differently, that's kind of what we're talking about. Is like, well, how do you do that? How do you feel more comfortable as a people person? Or how do you become more of a morning person? Because I guess to establish too, do you feel like you're set in certain things? Like that's just like who you are?
No. The both sides of this. So I think that a lot of times what I hear when people say, oh, that's just how I am, is usually things that can change. And what I mean is, like, if I could say, I used to be the person who, like, if I felt like I was right, I would argue with the person until, like, try to make them see my point of view and things like that. And now I just don't care. Like, I can do that, but that's not just how I am. Like, that's something, like, I made a conscious choice to change. Like, when people say I'm really blunt, but it's in a way that, like, hurts people's feelings. Not to say you shouldn't be honest, but there's a way to do it that isn't just running people over and, like, hurting them. And so there's ways to learn and grow, even in set qualities. For example, I'm always going to be a giver. I think that's something that's not going to change about me, but I can change in the way to where I don't give where it becomes codependent or enabling in a relationship, or I don't give when I don't have anything to give.
There's still a better way you can manage it.
Yeah, I think there's always better ways to do things, even if they're set, and I'm using air quotes, even if they're set qualities versus, like, things that you want to change. For example, like, if someone was like, oh, I don't want to be late anymore. Like, that's something you can change. That's not just how you are. I mean, well, some people it might be, but.
Well, so yeah, that's the thing. I think most of the time when we say, well, that's just how I am, or when I hear somebody say that, to say that, it really is you're just justifying or making an excuse for the most part. If it's not something you could change. If this is about you being black, yeah, you're black, bro. Like, I don't think you can change that. Or, well, shoot.
But please don't.
It is 2019, so I guess you can do some things, but hopefully you don't want to.
Yeah.
But I think it's okay to have a very clear understanding of where you are, like have a realistic viewpoint of where you are and what those things are that you may want to change and why. But I do think that you can change them. Like, we can, of course, all grow. To say this is just how I am completely blocks you from any kind of growth, whether it's, just a little bit or whether it's like a total 180 thing. So it's not to say, don't be who you are. I think you still have to love people where they are, love people for who they are. But I think it's okay to acknowledge and admit to yourself, all right, me just complaining and saying, I'm not a morning person, and I start my day late every day, still isn't okay. Like, that's still something that I can focus on, that I can change and work on.
It is. But I want you to elaborate. You said realistic. Like, can you elaborate on that?
If I remembered what I had said. Be realistic in that. And I think this is probably something I thought I was going to touch on later, but we probably can come back to it. Being realistic with your current assessment means not getting trapped up in the fantasy of what you want to be. So, for example, for me specifically, I look like I'm mad productive. I look like I'm working all the time. I do work a lot. But realistic thing that I work on, like I've always talked about procrastination, I still have to be real with me, like that, this is not acceptable as the amount of times I do drop the ball. Even though I might get a lot of stuff done or whatever, like, all right, let me be realistic about the fact that this is really where I am and this is what I need to change, regardless of like what it looks like, regardless of how much I tweet about, oh, I get so much stuff done all the time, or I'm so productive. That's fine. And I think it's like a balance of, all right, how much of what you're saying to yourself is just you psyching yourself out, like, oh, I'm there already, and how much of it, but you also don't want to be negative, down talking. Like, every day, it doesn't help me to be like, oh, I'm a procrastinator, oh, this, oh, that, oh, that. But it also doesn't help me to be like, man, I'm on it, when you're not all the way on it.
Yeah. So it's like giving yourself props where they're due, but also realizing you have room for growth and giving yourself the space to do that.
Yeah. And I mean, just keeping it real with yourself, having self-awareness, I think, is a big key in change, because like you said, you have to be aware of what you want, and you have to be aware of where you are to make the necessary steps to get you there, I guess.
And I think that's the first part. If we're talking about change, if you don't know, I just hit the mic, sorry. If you don't know where you are, like, how can you assess where you want to go? Like, I think that's really important, figuring out, like you said, being realistic. And I like the way you put it with yourself about, like, okay, I'm starting here. Like, for example, with me, like, this is like I have this health goal, but I'm actually right here, and I need to know where I am in order to know the steps I need to take to get to where I want to be.
But then what is the block? Why don't we just do these things? If I know my goals are, if I have a weight goal or something like that, and I say, all right, I have a gym membership. I want to go 3 times a week. Why don't we? Why is it hard to change? Or why is it hard to say, okay, I shouldn't procrastinate. I know I shouldn't. This hurts me so bad right now. The fact that I have to do this thing right now at 3 a.m. because it's due tomorrow and I waited too late and I have to do it. I hate this feeling. I'm so mad. I'm so stressed. And then a week later, you're still in the same boat. Like, why don't we just immediately say, I never want to feel this, and then change?
And then don't do it. Don't ever feel it again. Because I know we've all been there. I definitely was up
every other day. Like, I don't understand. And then this goes back to the realistic thing. And then to turn around and be like, man, I work, and this is what I say, man, I work great against the wall, like with my back against the wall. And I do.
I work better under pressure.
Yeah, but imagine if you work good under pressure, imagine how much better the output would be if you really, like 2 weeks ago, had started doing this thing.
We talk about this, like we're good at like making money. Why aren't we always like that? Why is it only when we're like, oh, our accounts, we really need it, do you have to make something happen? I feel like you can't look at it in a vacuum. So I don't think there's one answer for everything. But one of the things that I see is that there's not a why. And I'm thinking like, it's not your goals and the things you want to change. You're not tied into why. And what I mean when I say that is like, for example, like I want to go to the gym more, but why? Oh, because I want my body to look better.
The problem is not being as closely tied to the
why. It's so like having these goals, but they're not tied to anything deeper than just
stuff
a goal.
You know you need to do. But
yeah,
it's
exactly. But to And so, well, I want my body to look better. But what does that look like for you? Well, I want to be like Instagram models, and not to talk down on them. I'm just saying, like, you don't have like a serious reason. So why would you change your routine, something that you've built up and that you have this, if it's not a bigger purpose? And I feel like for me, I always have to tie my goals into the why. So I'm doing this because my health, like I want to be around to see my grandkids. I want to be competitive. Like, Hunger Games ever happens, y'all want me in your district.
I'm glad y'all, like there's multiple people beside me. I'm glad you said that because so health is one of the top things where now, like we talked about with Leslie when she was a guest, when something happens, now all of a sudden it gets real easy to like eat healthy and do what you need to do and try to reverse your diagnosis or all of a sudden if you're in some actually, and I think this is on my thing to talk about today too, but all of a sudden when you are in some scenario where you have a close call with death, for example, or something like that, and all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, I need to, like you start thinking, right? It brings value to your life to think about the fact that it could be done any moment. And so now you're like, well, why am I not doing these things now? Like sometimes you need that jolt, but why do we need that jolt? That's why it's super morbid, but I really kind of think about death a lot. I'm trying to make this not sound weird, but I kind of think about it a lot, and that it's like, well, wow, that's why it's easy for me to look around at these trees and enjoy, all these little things, because it's like, that's the point. While you're here, you're supposed to be getting it, right? You're supposed to be enjoying it, and you could be gone any minute. Yeah. So like it helps you appreciate, it gives the value to your life. So I think that's something to help kind of keep it in perspective, I guess, of like, why it's important to change. Yeah,
and for me, so The Untethered Soul, I know I keep plugging that book, but it did a really good job of putting that into perspective and like not like a morbid way, but literally like if it was your last day, how would you want to spend it? Like what do you want your legacy to look like? What impact do you want to make? So tying it into these whys. And I think that that's one of the things that keeps people from making change is because it's not in perspective.
Because it's not, like you say, it's not until you're on the line for some reason or your family or something. And
or like telling people that you love them. Like, why?
But that really is just saying that we're not appreciating that family or the day or yourself or whatever, because you should be moving in a way that like it, what's the right way to say this? Like you should be moving in a way where you really appreciate like your moments. And so to go to the gym is really like loving yourself. To not do something that you should be doing for a certain amount of time is like, look at all this time you kind of maybe not necessarily wasted, depending on what change or thing we're talking about. But like, look at all this time that we let go by that we didn't value.
And that goes with, it's just perspective, right? So when I go to the gym, like cardio is not necessarily my favorite thing, but I'm grateful that my body can do that. Like I'm grateful that I can get up and that I woke up this morning and that I can go to the gym and do these things. And so just tying it into perspective and remembering, you know, to cherish each and every moment, because not to be morbid or morose, but we definitely aren't promised any moment past right now. And I feel like that's, people also have issues, and not just y'all, this is me too, but living in the present and being present.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's like one of the first big things.
So a why, having a good why is good, and perspective. Another reason why I think people don't change is because we spent so much time developing whatever the bad habits might be, or not doing something or doing something. And it's hard to break that. It's just hard. Like when you're used to eating a certain way, you've grown up eating a certain way, or if you're used to talking or speaking a certain way, like whatever it is, it's hard to just change that all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So when we talk about the steps, I guess we'll talk about ways to kind of like slowly break that down.
And two things for that. So I think it's like the myth is like 21 days to make a habit or whatever. But actually I read an article that was saying that the Harvard Business Review or Harvard Business article was misstated. It's not 21 days. It's like 90 actually that it creates. And not to like, sorry, y'all, for who. I mean, it could take 21 days for you, but the article actually was longer than that. But then also, you're talking about we've created these habits. By the age of 35, in the book I was reading, what's Dr. Joe Dispenza's book?
I don't know who that is.
Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself.
Oh, okay.
That book. So Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, he's saying by age of 35, our whole life has become muscle memory. We literally wake up, we do the same things. You either kiss your spouse or your kids or whatever goodbye. You drive the same way. You walk the same way. You go to the gym. You come home. Our lives are literally muscle memory. And so it takes a conscious moment to actually change. And it's really hard because if you think about it, a lot of things like the way you brush your teeth, the way you do everything, like that is a literal representation of these habits that we built up in our lives. And think about how different it would be to make sure you brush your teeth with the opposite hand every time. Just like little things.
Two things to what you just said. I'm trying to remember which book it was, but there was another book kind of that talked about that as well, where you need to stop like living on autopilot, or recognizing how much we do live on autopilot. And it gives yourself a little more power and gives yourself a little more strength too, like Carlie said, when you're doing something as simple as brushing your teeth, just to think about, let's do something different, or to let you recognize you have more choices than you think. It's not just, oh, I do this, or if Carlie says something to me, my immediate snapback might be what I would go to. But if you're more aware of how much choice you have in every little thing, you can kind of catch yourself being on autopilot and stop yourself to do something different.
Yeah.
And when you really get in a habit of doing that, you really do start to see different things change. Going back to choose your own adventure. Like you get to make a decision. You know, you don't have to let things bother you. You don't have to. A lot of times for me, like procrastination again, when I catch myself picking up my phone to get on Twitter, because as soon as I'm typing something and doing something and I'm like, oh, I don't want to, like as soon as it's something difficult, I'm like, phone pick up, and then I can literally pick it up now. And I say like, Lex, you know, you're just picking this up to procrastinate. Sometimes I'm still like, fuck it. And I still go into it. I literally will say that to myself though. And then sometimes I'm like, all right, Lex, yeah, put it down. So at least that moment of like thinking I do have a decision, this doesn't have to be automatic, is pretty cool when you think about it like that. You have so much more power than you probably give yourself credit for. And then the second thing to what you just said that I liked, you talked about that it's really 90 days. But consider also that maybe it could be helpful to not think about it as trying to break habits more than you're creating new habits. So if you're focusing on what's that habit you're trying to create, maybe it's less about what you have trouble doing, like what's hard and what you can't do, like, oh, I can never get to sleep by this time, or I can never wake up, or I can never do whatever, and focusing on like, all right, how do I build this new habit of being in bed by 11, or how do I bring in this habit of slowly like waking up a little earlier or whatever it is, instead of focusing on like what the trouble is.
And I love that. I feel like in life, like where focus goes, energy flows. And so always focusing on the positives of a situation as opposed to the negative. For example, if you hate running, if you go to the gym and you're on the treadmill, I hate running, it's never going to get any better. But if you're like, okay, well, I ran a mile in this amount of time and now I want to try to beat it, or just thinking about gratitude, or changing the music you listen to, or maybe running outside or getting a friend to run, like little things that can make the quality.
Did that with running.
That can make the quality so much better. I love that. And ways to shake up your routine. I feel like it actually doesn't necessarily have to take that long to create habits. If you start breaking up your routine, for example, like when you're walking outside, look up. When's the last time you looked up? Instead of staring at your phone.
Girl, I'll be tripping if I don't look down sometimes, though. But
I've almost like wiped out like TV show, like joke wipe out.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Or like putting your phone in your pocket. Like there's like walking meditations and things. And you don't feel like, oh, I'll meditate. You don't have to do that. But walk and look around. Like put your phone up literally and just see how different your day could be.
That really is like a good exercise. So we're going to just like stop right now to already give you exercise to like the next time you really feel like you're just drawn to do something, like literally just stop. Like stop and catch yourself and do something different. Just try it with something small. And you can maybe choose it ahead of time. Like just think of something small. I drink too much soda, maybe. Next time you're going to get a soda, literally try to catch yourself and go get a glass of water. Like something that simple. Because I think what happens is you start to feel good. Like when you make a different choice, you feel good about it. And so that's easier to expand upon as like a reinforcement than to be upset because, oh man, I went another day and didn't do this thing.
Yeah.
What's another reason?
I feel like, I was going to say, change can be hard because you can quote unquote fail. Like you become vulnerable because if I say I want to make this change in my health and maybe even I tell somebody about it, what happens if I don't do it? And like that can keep me from like ever wanting to make the change because I might fail.
Well, see, as long as you never say like, oh, I'm trying to lose weight.
Yeah, then people can't be like,
I'm
oh,
fine.
or try to hold me accountable. And that also requires like I said, being vulnerable with people and letting down walls as to what your dreams are, what your hopes are, what you're excited about, what you're scared of, because what if you fail? But what if you try and you get halfway to your journey? Like you could also succeed. What if you succeed? But also people can be scared of that. And so I think that a lot of times can also keep people from change in general, like not just with health, but with anything. Like I don't want to change my job because what if I take this new job opportunity and I don't do well? Like I've been doing this other thing for 10 years. I can do it. I'm comfortable.
That's a good point too. You definitely have to be more, I mean, with any change, yeah, you have to be vulnerable, even if it's with yourself, which sometimes is hard to do. So the last thing I have down for why it can be hard to not break habits, but why it can be hard to change is because sometimes we get too excited or too hyped and feel good about talking about it. And this goes back to, again, the fantasy of your future self. Are you letting the fantasy of your future self keep you from making the actual changes you need to make? And by that, I mean, when I'm procrastinating, am I like, oh man, but all right, this is something I know I need to work on. I'm going to work on it. I'm working on it. Like I could tell myself those things, but am I ever actually sitting down to say, okay, well, this is due next week, so this is what I can do different. Like really making efforts versus just thinking like, you know what's better? Like, all right, I'm going to go to the gym, like, or I'm going to go walk tomorrow or do whatever I need to do. And that makes you feel good about not doing it now. And so you never really do it. Did that make sense?
A little bit.
letting fantasies of your future self, like telling yourself like all these cool things about what you're going to be and what you're going to do. You're thinking about those things instead of actually thinking about what are these steps that I should be doing right now.
It's kind of like what my interpretation of that is kind of like when people fall in love with quote unquote potential, like in relationships of all the things it could be instead of realizing actually where it is, or falling in love with ideas. And like we kind of touched on this before, but a lot of people that I meet in LA in business will say that they're doing a lot of things and there's these ideas, but where's the work like behind it? And I definitely want my friends and anybody in my life to call me out if I say that I'm doing all these things, but there's no fruit. Like what's going on? And I feel like you said, like it's, what is it? Falling in love with the future fantasy of ourselves.
Fantasy of your future self.
Fantasy of our future selves.
Because I know, it's like, oh, I'm going to be
future Carlie Lex.
popping. Yeah, I'm going to be super popping. All these things are going to happen. And yet week to week, I still have the same things due. So it's like,
But it's like, why? What keeps us from taking that first step, right? Like we fall in love with this fantasy of our future self, but what keeps people from taking the next step. I think sometimes it can be daunting and scary in a sense that it's like there might be so much room for growth that it becomes this elephant in the room that you just never decide to take the steps to do it.
But Carlie, think about it for real, like really, really personally. And for somebody who I would say is pretty self-aware, like, you know, and like at a level of kind of understanding these concepts, right? For you, thinking about the things you want to change, and not that you have to get super specific about anything, but what's really keeping you from making those changes? What really is keeping you from that next step? Out of these things even we're saying, because all of a sudden I'm like, well, we know these things that we're saying, and yet we still struggle with it too.
Yeah, we definitely do.
I don't think I'm scared of failure or scared of success.
I think in the past I have been scared of success in the sense like, what if I do make it and I don't know what to do with it and I don't want to lose it? It's like I know I can achieve some things, but I think I've grown through that. But that definitely is one that I can pinpoint. Another one is discipline. It's literally just shutting up and doing it.
Yeah, self-discipline is always really like it's the lack of it. Like if my self-discipline improves, everything improves.
Everything else improves in it. It's just taking it day by day. Like,
but you know what builds self-discipline is doing what you say you're going to do.
Exactly.
So it's like, is that chicken and egg? I don't know.
And that is the conundrum of life.
I'm going to keep it real with myself, and something I just realized and why I asked you this, because I was thinking like, well, what is it that makes change hard for me? I think a lot of times the things that I say I want to change or want to do, I don't really want to do.
What do you mean?
And I think maybe it's more important that I recognize and understand back to the realistic of who I am or what matters to me or whatever. Let's say the whole morning person thing. I think I don't want to wake up. I just don't want to wake up early. Like I enjoy sleep, and I get that, yes, you have to make certain sacrifices or whatever, but we're saying we want to do things that we really don't want to do a lot of times.
Oh, and I think it's because they sound good.
Exactly. And that's what I mean about that future fantasy thing. Like now I don't even know what I called it.
Fantasy
but
of
like,
your future self.
Yeah, because it's like, oh yeah, my fantasy Lex wakes up early, gets stuff done every day, blah, blah, blah. And again, not to act like I'm actually really a bum, but I do have a lot of bum days. and I think that, so in that instance of waking up, I don't want to wake up. So I can say that all the time, and I can say that's something I should work on. But now it's like, well, actually, should I? There are more important change things that maybe I recognize more of a why to. Whereas with this, Lex, wake up whenever you want to wake up, but still make sure you do something that works for you as far as how you're productive.
Yeah.
Unless it's like, oh, I have 6 a.m. meetings or something, then yes, if that's the life that I've set, then I need to do those things. So I'm not saying don't be irresponsible, but I think that's an honest look at the things you say you want to change. And it's like, well, why?
Why?
Yeah.
And I
just because you think it sounds better.
And that's a hard self-check.
Or is that really something that will make you a different or better person? Ooh. And so maybe it's not necessarily the waking up. It's really, how am I better spending my time while I'm awake, honestly?
Exactly.
And that's an easy way just to throw that out, to be like, oh, well, if I woke up earlier, oh, well, maybe tomorrow, maybe tomorrow, maybe tomorrow.
That's a great self-check. Why do you want these things that you say that you want to do? Like, why do you want to be a morning person? Why do you want to lose 20 pounds? Like, why? What is the reason? Because if you don't have a good enough reason, you're not going to do it. And then that a lot of times leads into beating yourself up.
Not really real.
Yeah, but then that just leads into reasons to beat yourself up and have more negative self-talk. If you're like, quote unquote, failing at these goals you don't even really want. That's really interesting. And I think very insightful.
I really need to change. So I wouldn't even say that to myself anymore. And I've actually done better about being like, you know what? I let myself wake up.
Do that.
But I think the real thing is assessing. What I want to change is not waking up earlier. What I want to change is being more productive and efficient with my time. Because I can wake up at 7 a.m. and then still by 11 I may have done more stuff, may not. But I do personally recognize I get more stuff done if I start earlier. So, again, I'm not like saying, oh, this is for sure one thing or the other. But I can still get way more done if I woke up at noon if I wanted to.
Yeah, and I think that's also realizing that your goals, your life, your path doesn't have to look like or sound like or be like anybody else's. And for someone like for me, like I read a lot, I watch a lot of videos and to see how successful people got successful and like 10x and what things can I change. But if it doesn't work for you, then it doesn't work for you. And that's okay. And your life doesn't have to cookie cutter fit anybody else's life or vision of success or their path to get there.
Yeah, I think it's a constant process of self-awareness and evaluation and just paying attention across the board.
That's good, Lex.
Okay, look, I'm getting a little therapy session today. Getting comfortable.
We gonna get this.
Right. Look, I'm about to make some changes in my life. For real.
Because she wants to.
For real this time.
For real.
Oh, boy. Let's give them some steps. So we talked about what changes, what makes it hard. But now, all right, what are some things? And we started dropping a couple little things, but what can we do to go from, dang, I wish this, or man, I know I shouldn't be doing this, to living that life?
Dun, dun, dun. So the first one I wrote down because I feel like setting your foundation is the most important. It's called priming. And that's not my word. That's Tony Robbins' word. He's a motivational speaker, really dope. But every single morning, he has this thing where like this called priming routine where you set the foundation for your day. You get up, you breathe, you do a meditation, you do gratitude, and then you move your body and then you get it going. And that's what his routine looks like. My routine, like in yoga, it's called sadhana, like your discipline. Like there's words for whatever you want to call it. But if you're not in a space mentally, physically, emotionally, where you feel good, then the likelihood of you making any changes or being productive is very slim, like in your day. And so I feel like in order to make any change in your life and to feel better, just all over, is to set a foundation, like a strong foundation. And I know some people like write Bible verses every day or write in their journal or get up and meditate or run first thing in the morning. Whatever your thing is, do it and commit to it. And it can be different every day. It doesn't have to, but definitely I think it's important to figure out how to build up that foundation for yourself.
So if developing a routine that works for you is a step towards change, how do I change to stick to a morning routine?
And it might not be morning.
It may not, but do you kind of get what I'm asking?
Yeah.
In that even with these steps, it's also like, okay, how do I start that?
So you try something. So if you like working out, maybe you pick a time every day to try to work out and try mornings. And if you're not a morning person, try that. If you do yoga, maybe you commit to doing 5 sun salutations every single day. If you like breathing or you want to try breathing, look up some breathing videos on YouTube.
So you just said, look up, commit to.
Try.
Right. Try to do. So notice that Carlie is saying all these action words where at the end of the day, you have to do something. So, with all of these steps, we can talk about ways to make better change, but it's still like putting all of these into practice still requires you really like going in.
Yeah, but figuratively
and
moving those
recognizing
feet.
how much power you have to actually get up. And once you do it a few times, like you start to realize.
And there's like stuff scientifically behind like moving your body too. So when like Newton's law is like something in motion stays in motion until something hits it, or something in rest stays at rest until something changes. Scientifically, like whenever you're having like anxiety or you're really sad or having a bad day or whatever, if your body just stays in that like burrito position, like you're more likely with the blanket, you're more likely to keep that negativity and that heavy energy. But if you get up and move, like you'll feel better. And I know it sounds dumb, trust me. And I fight it often, but it's actually just doing it. Yeah. But it's so all these steps that we're giving are literally you just doing it. And you don't have an excuse because you don't have to do what me and Lex do because we don't even do the same things. But it's just figuring out what works for you and trying things. So what you don't like journaling, maybe you read in the morning, maybe you pray, maybe you whatever.
But set a foundation is what you're saying. Okay. What's another step?
I think, well, we kind of already talked about it, but like tying, like, so maybe writing down your goals or thinking through your goals and then figuring out why you want to
change.
Yeah. Like the thing that you want to change, like writing them down and then tying it to why you want to change it. Like, okay, I want to be, like Lex said, I want to become a morning person. Well, why? Because it sounds good. Okay, probably not a good thing. Wow. Okay, well, what does that really mean? Trying to find the root of the things that we're wanting to change.
Okay. That's important.
Right. What about you?
Well, you kind of came up with this list. So
Okay, I'll just continue.
I'm going to be the detailed question follow-up person.
Bet. So another one is reflecting. And that kind of goes with
that's what you just did.
To your
My bad.
why. No, it's like
okay.
Figuring out, like taking an assessment to figure out in reality where you are with something. And why do I want to change it? So that's kind of tied together. I think realizing that this happens one day at a time, one step at a time sometimes. Like,
can I back up just a touch? Well, it kind of goes with both of those.
What's up?
Reflection.
Yeah.
And breaking it down. When it comes to an assessment of where you are, so let's say the change you want to make is waking up earlier.
Yeah.
Maybe a good idea. And I'm saying maybe because, again, I'm just kind of thinking about things as we're talking it through. But maybe it'd be cool to take a week and just document. Like whatever that thing is you want to change, document what you are doing. So maybe in the mornings when I wake up, I write down what time I woke up. Looking at it, you may end up seeing like, oh, I'm not doing that bad. Or maybe you might say, okay. So this is at least like really knowing what like the real data is.
Yeah.
I think sometimes I might be like, dang, I woke up late. To me, being on the West Coast and having East Coast clients waking up at 8 a.m. could feel like
so
late
hard.
because they already ate lunch and stuff. You know what I mean? So sometimes it really is just my mind being like, oh, I feel like I'm in a rush. But if you really pay attention, or maybe it's anger issues or something you want to change, or how you respond to somebody about something, somebody you have a relationship with or whatever. If you are noting for a week, like, all right, I'm going to jot down like what is happening, maybe it kind of helps you to make a habit of being more self-aware.
Yeah. And that's so important. For any of my personal training clients or any of the clients at the gym, we literally have them do a food log. Because, you want to change your nutrition, but you have to figure out where you are
first.
first.
You don't even really know what you eat.
And you don't. If you think about it, like, oh, man, I did have that one cookie in the break room today, and then somebody gave me some Skittles. But you literally don't see it until you write it down. And also we're talking about being better stewards of our time and the time that we have. Write down what you do with your day. Look at your screen time app. See how many hours you spend on Facebook and social media, and then you'll figure out where your time is going. So it's not that there's not enough hours in the day. It's that you're spending them on the wrong things. Or on the things that aren't in alignment with your goals. And so I love that, like just taking it all the way back and realizing where you are.
One more to that same point with business. So we all say like, oh, we want more gigs or we want to make more money. A lot of times, and I'm guilty of this myself, if somebody asked me how much money I made last month, I probably could, how do I know that what I want to improve on with my work or with my prices or with what I'm bringing in, if I can't even really tell you like what happened in the last couple months, like if I don't know where I am, just to say, oh, I want to do more, it's just talking kind of. Even with setting my goals before, with setting money goals in the past, one thing I did was, well, what things do I think I want? Writing those down, like, oh, I want this apartment or this car or this equipment or whatever. How much does that stuff actually cost? Like, if I don't even know how much this stuff costs, like, what am I moving
this money
for?
Go for it.
Like, what am I trying to do? How much money do I even really need month to month to live the life I say I want to live? And now that I have real numbers, it's like, oh, shoot, now where am I at? And oh, shoot, now at least I know where I'm starting and where I want to be, and we can make like real changes. It's not just talk anymore if you really know what the parameters are.
Yeah.
So I think that's important. It takes it away from just talking about or thinking about it to actually understanding where you are. Putting
it into like practice and implementation, understanding like the data behind it. And y'all know we nerds. We love the data.
Exactly, though. And then to what you said about small step at a time. So Carlie said one step at a time. And for me, I say one day at a time. What do you mean when you say taking it one step at a time?
So whenever I was working construction, Can
you imagine her in one of those hard hats?
It's pictures
boots?
on my Instagram.
That's kind of what I'm imagining.
They were not
and a clipboard.
Sexy. I did definitely have that with my little glasses and my safety vest.
Oh.
Yeah, no, it wasn't sexy at all. But I was the only project engineer on this really big project, and I was like really losing my shit basically. And I was talking to my project manager, and I was like, and he was just like,
like relax.
Yeah, bro. But it was stressful because like construction, like you get there 6:00 in the morning, and if you're supposed to be there at 7, but it's the good old boys, so you're judged by how early you get there and how late you stay. And I'm already a a woman and a person of color. This is a whole other episode, but there's just so many things that were stressful. And so I was telling him about all my like subcontractors and all the contracts, and the architects were doing this and the engineers are doing this and the owner this. And he was like, Carlie, how do you eat an elephant? And I was like, you don't, why do you eat it? Like, I was like, what? You don't eat elephants? And he was like, one bite at a time. He was like, if you look at anything past that, it can become daunting. And so making change, taking steps towards your goals, towards changes, towards whatever in your life is realizing that you literally can't do everything at once, but what can you do to start getting you towards something? That's why I say one step at a time.
So kind of what we were just talking about too, as far as breaking it down.
Yeah.
Breaking down that thing that you want to change into like, what does that look like in pieces or in little steps where.
In little steps.
Yeah. Maybe just waking up, 30 minutes earlier or challenging yourself to something instead of being like how I tend to be, I want to start waking up at 5 every morning.
And then run a marathon and then do this and do this. And your body's like, child.
I can do it for like 2 days and I'm like, all right.
But I think about it in a very literal sense. So whenever I get really down on myself or whenever I'm really stressed out or in a slump, like in a valley, I make myself walk. Like if I can't do anything else, I can walk. I can get up, put on some shoes, and just go outside and walk. And that's literally one step at a time. And knowing that I have that agency, that power to do that and get myself out of situations is really empowering. And I think it's good for change, like remembering that it is just in small tidbits and pieces.
I don't remember if we've already mentioned this today because I feel like it comes up in different episodes and things. But essentially, having small wins and accomplishments build up your self-confidence and your esteem to continue in that direction. So that's why I think breaking things down smaller into pieces that you can eat are like, okay, I did this. Like I cut soda out. Now, what's next? Now you feel good. Now, I can do this or I did do this.
Yep.
And so you feel better about yourself and your ability to change. And so it makes it an easier kind of ground now to continue to do that. When I say one day at a time too, it is essentially that same concept that you said, and also the idea that we don't have to think about the full end goal every day. It's just today, like what did I do today? What can I do today? And just thinking about just today, like, hey, I said I wanted to go to the gym every day. What time am I going to the gym today? I'm going. And just thinking about that, like not thinking about, I have to go tomorrow, I have to do this, I have to do that. And then the next day, it's just forget yesterday, forget tomorrow, what did I do? Or what am I going to do? And also at the end of the day, being like, shoot, if I didn't do it, okay, next day, forget that. Like,
I'm going to do it
we
tomorrow.
didn't do it, shame, whatever, forgive yourself. I'm doing it today. Like, all right, what time am I going? So still to just think about each day at a time instead of this huge picture, because it is so overwhelming. That always paralyzes me to think about the big picture too much. And I'm such a big picture person that it's hard for me to break things down that way. And
I feel like that can actually keep you from making change. Like that's the elephant in the room. Yeah. Like if you feel like you can't do it all.
It keeps you in place because you keep looking at it every day like, oh man, I don't know. Oh,
yeah,
man,
that's definitely a reason. And I feel like that ties also with, I wrote down letting go of perfection. And what I mean with that is that big goal, like you're not going to accomplish that today, and that's okay. And guess what? It might not be on the same timeline that you want it to be, and that's okay too. But as long as every day you're making movement towards it, if it's an inch, if it's a mile, some days you're going to have miles. Some days you might have a millimeter, but it's movement.
But again, maybe in that same vein though, and going back to one day at a time with this letting go of perfection, I can think I can do this today. Like, and that's all I have to think about is I could do this today. And thinking about it in that little pieces and not saying like it's a perfect forever thing just because I did it today.
Yeah, and it doesn't always have to be like that. I think just being open to how things manifest and letting go of perfect. And I'm a reformed perfectionist. But what I've realized is like perfectionism is also a form of procrastination because it's like if I can't do it perfect or it's not going to be this, then I'm just not going to do it. Or I'm going to have to wait until another day where I can do it perfect. If you don't get your stuff done.
Right.
And that sounds like somebody auntie. Right. But get your stuff done. Like just do it and stop comparing yourself to this perfect version of yourself or to the idealized version of yourself.
Fantasy of your future self.
Hey.
Ooh, see how that's real?
See,
that's
just rolls off the tongue. Or somebody else. Like stop looking on Instagram and comparing. Like I could be like, man, Lex got all these clients, but I didn't get that many clients this month, and now that makes me less than. No, fool, we have different journeys, and that's okay.
That is one of those things that can keep you from change too, or keep you from doing what you need to do because you feel like, like I still won't be this other thing. Or
yeah, like it's not enough, or it's not too much, or that it is too much, or whatever. Like I think those are all of them. So letting go of perfection. And then stopping comparing. And then my last one, which is my answer for everything almost, is practicing.
I want to know about that one too.
Practicing gratitude is always being grateful for where you are, for your health, for another day, and another chance to take some more steps tomorrow. Like just being grateful for where you are in your progress. Which one did you?
Well, you also have down here the psychology of it, tying it to what happens if you don't do it.
Yeah.
So that's important too, because just like we said, attach it to a why and it's something important to keep you going. Thinking about, and this is, correct me if this is not what you meant by this, but thinking about what you stand to lose if you don't do this thing, or if you don't change, or if you don't do better, like what could happen to your health? What could happen if your kids, lose you, or if all of a sudden you're not making any money, or like if something happens, like, this is why I need to do this thing.
And I like to be a positive, focused person. Like my cup is always more than half full, and even when I'm struggling. But I think it is sometimes important to take a step back and look at the big picture. Like what would happen if I'm not doing this thing? If I don't become the highest version of myself, what could go wrong? If I don't take care of my health, what could happen? If I don't, make this change, like stop drinking or stop smoking or whatever the change is. It doesn't even have to be nothing like that. If I don't go to the gym and take care of myself, what could happen?
And you want some scared straight type stuff.
Yeah, basically. But like thinking about that for yourself, because as positive as I am, sometimes it's good to know the other side of that coin too. Like here's all the things that could happen, but here's also what could happen if I didn't.
Yeah, and like Carlie said before, all of these things you have to kind of adapt to what makes sense for you. But I really like kind of the convo we were having at the beginning, that a lot of it is around you keeping it real with yourself about a lot of this, your whys, your reasons to change, what you want to change. I mean, there's so many different types of things, right? We all have different goals as far as the person we think is that cool person we want to be.
Yeah.
But again, at the end of the day, after saying all of that stuff, this thing that people hate to hear and hate to see, and I get why, because it's like, okay, but at the end of the day, you have to make a decision to do it, whatever it is.
And then do it.
Yeah.
It's not just the decision, because I can decide that I'm going to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning every day and go run 3 miles. It's actually getting up out of bed.
And when your alarm goes off, and going back to what we said about in that moment, if you're very aware of it and you're focused on, that one thing, maybe like you're not trying to do too much at once, like trying to change everything all at once. But if you're focused on that one thing, it's really in that moment of truth, when that alarm goes off,
Dun, dun, dun.
how you going to act? Like,
what are you going to decide?
You literally have to decide, like, I'm not pushing snooze. Get up, like jump up quick, do the moving around like Carlie was saying. Like I've said before in other episodes, when it comes to like social media snooping or different types of things, it literally just clicked. Don't do that. Or if you're thinking about it or about to do it, catching yourself. If you're in a space where you're self-aware about it, you can at least catch yourself, and now you're making the decision. So whether you do it or don't do it, it's like you feel it more, I guess.
And that's the hard part. That's the discipline, right? Like even when I'm not feeling it, that's the hardest part to do it. When I'm all revved up on the idealized version of myself and what I want to accomplish and all my goals and all this, when I'm high off that, it's easy. But what about the days that it's not?
And there's a lot of days it's not. Like nobody wants to do a lot of this stuff. But we've talked about that again before too, where, motivation is trash. Motivation isn't anything. It's really you doing it, and your action is what's going to keep you in a good direction. So just to even challenge yourself on the smallest thing, you'll really see a difference in just the way I think you think about things that I think will help propel you in different areas as well. So maybe that would be advice maybe from me is think about what may be one of those lowest hanging fruit of things you can do different or things that you can try to do. And then maybe set something that helps you to be self-aware about it. When you see a certain thing, when you walk through a certain doorway, that's when you kind of stop to think about like, oh, let me get some water or let me do something, whatever your thing is.
Being Mary Jane Post-it notes.
I was like, what? Get the what?
The Being Mary Jane Post-its.
Right. Like do what you need to do, but have a focus on like maybe just something small and simple or one of those simple steps that leads to that bigger change, like how you were talking about breaking it down or whatever, and focus on that. And just, I think you're going to see like a crazy change just from taking it little step by step. Yeah,
little steps and just committing to a daily, like choosing yourself over and over again, regardless of how you feel.
That's really, I mean, that's what life is it's a series of decisions and you really have a lot of power. And it really is that. It's, am I choosing myself? And that's one of those things that makes it real too, is in that moment, if you're in a place where you're self-aware in that moment, if you're like, dang, am I choosing me or am I choosing whatever else? Like you're kind of facing yourself to be like, damn, I'm not choosing me when I put this alarm down and don't go run. And are you okay with that? And it gives the responsibility to you, which it is your responsibility, it's your accountability. And not to sound like I'm like preaching at y'all now, because I 100% hit my snooze button 50 times a day. So like, let's not think this is about me saying like, oh, do this because this is what I do. But it's definitely something we're all working on. But honestly, when I look at things that way, it's like, yo, am I hurting myself or helping myself?
Because it's one or the other. There's no neutral decision. You literally have no neutral decision every day. So are you choosing you? And are you owning your power? You have power. You're more powerful than you could ever imagine. But are you choosing to own that power? Or is it owning you?
Think about that. So yeah, that's what we have on how to make real changes. So would love to hear any feedback that you guys have based on anything that we've said. Or I don't want you to necessarily feel like you have to tell us, oh, what are you working on? What are you trying to change?
Unless you want to.
But think about how you can break it down and how you can use some of these steps.
Or what works for you. Like something that maybe we missed or didn't do.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So screenshot, hashtag Carlie's Couch, @me and Lex. Also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We just got over 100. Yeah. Super excited. And our newsletter, we send out a weekly newsletter. So be on board for all of that and all the resources that we drop. And now we're going to the shout out of the week. Shout out of the week goes to my homegirl Beans, Desha Greene from South Central, from South LA. She has a restaurant or like a online restaurant. It's called Bean Bites LA. So on Instagram @Bean Bites LA. And they do fresh squeezed juices. They have monthly, like a subscription options for juices, for healthy lunches. If you're trying to, detoxify and get your body right, get your mind right, your health goals, and some yummy food from somebody who knows how to throw down, check out Bean Bites LA.
So is it delivery? Or?
It's on, I think, Uber Eats. And then also you can register with them. But I believe she's on Uber Eats too. So make sure you check her out.
But it's not a place you go to get food?
Okay. It's like a subscription delivery system. Yeah, it's really dope. Support local business, support Black women-owned business.
For sure.
Always.
Okay. And then our question of the week
Hit with the question.
Is, am I doing deep work? Carlie, are you doing deep work?
Always. I feel like when
really?
Yeah. Oddly enough, I feel like I am always working on myself. And
oh, so you interpreted this question way different. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, as I say, yeah. Maybe that means I don't know. I don't know what that means.
So based on what you're answering, then that makes sense. But continue.
I was gonna say I always am working on being the best version of myself.
I was just pointing to this book I have. That's called Deep Work. Oh, I guess I might as well throw this in here too.
Yeah.
Deep Work by Newport. That's how I'm about to answer it when I do.
Okay. But always working on myself and being the best version of myself, making sure I'm in alignment and I'm growing and on like working in purpose and all of those things. So I feel like I'm always doing deep work and trying to figure out how to give back. And that's like a consistent theme of my life. My auntie out here, one of my LA aunties, she always teases me. She was like, why you guys got to be so deep with everything?
That's funny. Right. Everything's like below the surface for you.
Always.
That's real. The term deep work to me is around literally working and being in a deep zone to where you're actually focused and doing like the highest optimization level of work.
Ooh.
That's the term Deep Work by Cal Newport. If you read his book, it's really good. And that helped me how to get a better understanding because like we've said multiple times in this episode, I very much tend to pick up my phone a lot or will have a thought about something else and go do that or work on this or do this while I'm in the middle of something. And so Deep Work in that book and how he says, you know, it's important to literally have that hour and a half, 2 hours blocked where you're literally focused on like hardcore focused on like going hard, focused. Wow, Carlie. We almost made it the whole episode.
And the question involves deep work, and I held it together.
Oh, yeah. But so for me, am I doing deep work? My answer in that sense would be no, a lot of times. But I remember like when I read the book, I tried to be more cognizant of that and that I will try, sometimes I will say like, all right, for this amount of time, I'm really going in on this and not just doing the quick surface things that are easy to do, but like those things that as soon as I get to them, that is where I want to pick my phone and be like, I don't want to do this. Yeah. Like I try to find something else to get me away from doing those hard things. And so I think it is important to be more focused. Like if you're working on something, really go all in, be focused on it. Yeah. And so to that, I would say a lot of times I'm not doing deep work and that's something I do want to continue to work on.
Yeah, I want to get better at that too. Nobody is good at multitasking. Science has proven. So all those people, sorry y'all, I thought I was too, but you're not. And so try to maybe see if you can cut down on distractions and work in small blocks of time, like completely focused on one thing, not 12 things.
Perfect. Yep. All right. Thanks, guys, for joining us today. Hopefully you think about things that you're working on changing, things you say you want to change, your future self and what's real.
And figuring out why.
Yep. And hopefully you got some good tips out of the episode today. And we will see you next Monday.
Bye, y'all.